Hello, everyone. I'm here with Danny Flood. Danny is author of the new best-selling book, Buy Your Own Island. He's also spent the last 4 years traveling around the world to over 30 countries. And in that time, he started 3 location-independent businesses. Danny also manages OpenWorld Magazine, a magazine focusing on digital nomads, adventure, and location-independent lifestyle and entrepreneurship. I'm thrilled to have Danny on the show. Hey, Danny,
Hey,
how you doing?
hey, Matt, I'm doing good. It's great to be here. It's been a long time in the making.
Absolutely. Good to have you on.
Yeah.
So why don't we go ahead and get started, and you can tell our listeners what your background is.
Yeah, sure. So as you mentioned, I just wrote a book called Buy Your Own Island. It's available on Amazon. You can just search that. It kind of chronicles, it parallels my own journey as a unemployable 20-something graduating into recession in the modern economy and kind of figuring it all out. I've been kind of a crash test dummy, I suppose. And I was able to kind of turn my life around, from where I was going. And the book kind of talks about what I've learned over the last several years. I've been traveling for 5 years now around the world. I've been to over 30 countries. I've never been able to hold it down a job for more than 1 month for some reason. And I guess I bristle at the fact that anytime someone tells me what to do and I ask why, and they're just like, because I said so. And I'm like, that's not a very good reason. This sounds stupid. I'm out of here. And so you can kind of get a little bit about my background.
Awesome. So it definitely sounds like you kind of, like you said, you're not a big fan of, having a boss telling you what to do. Who are some of your main inspirations growing up that kind of helped shape that ideology?
Well, I guess my biggest influence growing up was my father, which was kind of ironic because I really rebelled against my father a lot. Um, my father was a serial entrepreneur. He started the company Odyssey Golf and also Aldila Golf, which is the graphite shaft. He created the first graphite shaft. And,
Awesome.
he would always, he trained me to be an entrepreneur since I was like 8 years old. And he told me to go knock around doors in the neighborhood around us and, offer to take out people's garbage for them, stuff like this. And, he would put up like articles in my room, what it takes to be number one, Vince Lombardi, Earl Morale, this kind of stuff. And, I had a lot of rules, like I have to do push-ups and pull-ups every day. And, he's instilling this discipline in me. And, I kind of carry that into my adulthood. And I'm glad that I have those instincts now. It's made me disciplined. But at the same time, I think that every man, every individual has to kind of shed what they've been programmed to do and really find what works for them. And when I became an adult, I had no sense of myself. I had no identity. I wanted to really go out into the world and discover who I was, because I was just kind of molded this way. I was molded, to go to Catholic church every Sunday, even though I was saying all these, reciting all these things, and I didn't even know what they mean. I had to find what was
Right.
truly authentic to me, and that's kind of what this journey's been about.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Love to see that and hear that, you kind of didn't follow the path that was set up before you. So kind of as you've grown into the person you are today, how have those inspirations kind of changed? Have you gotten inspiration from different sources or different people? Kind of walk us through how that has progressed as you've grown into who you are today.
I've kind of been inspired by many of the people that I've met all around the world, and they've kind of taught me different things. I've learned from each culture that I've immersed myself in. When I was back home in the U.S., I felt like I didn't really have any good mentors. I didn't know who to turn to. I felt this kind of sense of fear and distrust and a little bit of frustration. And I think it manifests itself into this kind of sense of self-superiority to other people. But once I, started to go out and I meet people in Mexico and Brazil and Thailand, and I realized, wow, there's all these really interesting people all around the world and really smart. They've done all these things that I haven't done, and they can teach me something. And one of the early influencers or people who inspired me was this lady in Mexico named Maria Navarro. And one of the first trips I made was like 2 months living down there in Mexico. And I stayed at her place. She had a little bed and breakfast, and I helped her build a website. And she really taught me a lot about life, because I felt like I still had all these responsibilities back home and these shackles keeping me there and keeping me unhappy. And I felt like I had a lot to lose. And she told me, Iho, you have nothing to lose. And, it's a great point. And, she really helped me to really put things into perspective. That whole trip helped me put things into perspective. And yeah, when I went to Buenos Aires the first time for 3 months, I had like all these, same papers all around my wall, like my goals and, my daily rituals. And I was so afraid to let go of that part of me, I guess. But now that I look back, I think that all that stuff was just training wheels, and it's just preparing you for life. When you go out and you just live life, you can find inspiration everywhere, and you can just, not need all that stuff, I think.
Awesome. That's great. And it sounds like we have the fact that we like to pull inspiration from many different sources in common. One thing that I kind of come across in my own life is that it's easy for me to kind of overload myself with information. And I'm sure, you may have experienced something similar, traveling out to all these different places and researching and studying from other sources of inspiration as well. How do you kind of defend yourself against the kind of information overload? How do you defend yourself against being overwhelmed by all of this awesome information that is out there? How do you kind of sort through it and target in on the most meaningful?
I just kind of eliminate it, basically. Yeah, so I basically just kind of eliminate it. I don't read anymore. I went through a period where I was reading, one book a week. But learning just for the sake of learning, it's like panning for gold with holes, in the bottom of the pot. It's all. That's not a good expression, but it's like it just goes through one ear and out the other. And
Gotcha.
I call it basically. So I read a book on creativity, right? And there's two different terms the author uses. One is free range exploration. So that's when you're just like drawing inspiration from many sources, taking in all this information. Doesn't matter. You don't filter it or anything. Then there's another term called firing range exploration. So firing range exploration, you know exactly what it is you're looking for before you start taking in this information. So as long as you define what it is you actually need, you can get it very quickly. And so I practice a lot of firing range exploration because these days I'm more focused on creating content rather than consuming it. And so I don't read or watch the news. If I go on Facebook, I don't log into the homepage. I log into /messages, so I go right to my inbox. I bypass the news feed. I don't want to be distracted by any of that stuff. If I work, I find it a lot better to work without Wi-Fi. So I'll go on the the train or the subway, and I'll do my writing there because I'm much more productive. I'm not distracted by Wi-Fi. So you're talking about defending yourself. I think the best way is just to remove it entirely.
Awesome. And those are some really good insights that you raised. I really like the point about knowing what you're looking for before you kind of go after it and look for it. That's, invaluable stuff for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
So definitely. So Danny, tell us what you have going on currently.
Well, at the moment, I'm in Bangkok, and I spent the last month backpacking. I went to Malaysia. I traveled around the country. I was traveling with a Czech couple that I met down there. The Czech husband, he's the mayor of a town in the Czech Republic, so it was pretty interesting. And they were on holiday.
Awesome.
And we're driving around. Yeah, I went to the world's oldest rainforest, Tamanagara. I went to the Cameron Highlands, where a famous American disappeared some 80 years ago, 70 years ago. Business-wise, I just published the book, and it's done really well. I've been featured on about 30 or 40 different podcasts. We hit the bestseller charts for a couple of weeks in self-help categories, business and money categories. Otherwise, I'm working on publishing a series of other short books. how-to books, about 4 or 5 in the next 2 months. And we're working to publish our magazine, which is called OpenWorld Magazine. That's going to be a digital magazine.
Awesome. That sounds like you've got a lot of super exciting stuff going on, and I'm sure that our listeners like me are super jealous while we're sitting at our desks. But tell us, Danny, what made you decide to write a book, and how do you envision that it impacts your readers?
I started writing the book about a year and a half ago, and all I knew is that I was traveling around the world. I was having a lot of fun. I was having the time of my life, but I felt a little bit empty because work-wise, I felt totally uninspired. I wasn't interested in the work. I really had to force myself to sit down and do what I was doing, even though I was only working maybe 10 or 12 hours a week. The more I kind of removed myself from the work, the less interested in it I was. And I was at this high, where I completed this motorbike trip across, Vietnam and half of Southeast Asia, and I had a blast. But then after that, I was in Malaysia, I was in Penang, and then I realized, the work's not fulfilling me. I want to do something more. Whatever I do next, I want it to be bigger than what I've done already. I don't want to, slink back to a 9-to-5 job and live a small life. I want to keep pushing the bar higher. I'm at this plateau. I want to raise to the next level. And so,
Awesome.
For me, the answer kind of revealed itself. It's like, I'm going to write a book, and I'm going to write the book that I wish I'd had 4 or 5 years ago when I was starting out and I was frustrated, didn't know how to start out my life, and I'm going to take the best of everything I've learned these last few years and condense it into this book. And the book really talks about the steps I've taken step by step to change from where I was to where I am now. So
I'd love to see that you're continuing to push yourself, to the next level, and you're not satisfied by mediocrity, obviously. So the name of your book, Buy Your Own Island, it's really serves as a metaphor, and I'd like for you to talk to our listeners about kind of what that metaphor means to you and how it's impacted your life.
Yeah, sure. But before I answer that, I wanted to add a quote from Dan Gable, if that's right.
Yeah, of course.
Regarding the last question, Bruce Lee says something similar, but he says, "I'm a big believer in starting with high standards and raising them. We make progress only when we push ourselves to the highest level. If we don't progress, we backslide into bad habits, laziness, and poor attitude." And I love Dan Gable because he's one of the most successful athletes in history. He had a 192-1 wrestling record. He trained, multiple champions. I think he had some 15 titles when he was the coach at Iowa. And that just reflects perfectly how I feel regarding the answer I just gave. So now, I wasn't really sure how to title the book. I had a bunch of different. I had a working title which didn't really reflect anything that I wanted to. Didn't encompass what the meaning of the book. The term "buy your own island." It's kind of like a metaphor to take whatever your lifelong dream is and make it reality and make it practical and achievable. And I know that there's thousands of people that are doing this right now. Gary Vaynerchuk is an example. He says his ultimate goal is to own the New York Jets, and everything he does is aligned to that lifelong goal that he has to own the New York Jets. We don't know if he's going to get there or not, but he's come pretty far, And this concept, Buy Your Own Island, it's a story about 5 guys whom I know who, in less than 15 minutes, they bought their own island. They found one that was up for sale on Kijiji, which is the Canadian version of Craigslist. The guy emailed a few of his friends, and they all pitched in. And for me, I like that story because they bought their own island, but it's like the ultimate symbol of independence and freedom. And looking back at my own journey, it was all about freedom. I wanted the freedom to do what I wanted in my life. I didn't know what my destiny was going to be, but I knew that if I could have the freedom to choose, that's what it all came down to. So it's a metaphor, and it's an example. And I want to inspire people by that and some of the other stories in the book and say, this is possible. I want to help you get there. This is how you can do it.
Awesome stuff. And again, the whole idea of getting after it, whatever it is really inspiring, and especially to see someone like yourself just kind of traveling the world, living the dream, and trying to inspire others to do the same. Hats off to you, Mr. Flood.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, well, I think part of the problem is people don't really even know what it is they want. They're just kind of spinning the wheels, and they haven't really defined what would actually make them come alive. What they would be most passionate about. They kind of think about it and they brush it aside. If you ask someone how they are, how are you doing, they say, "Oh, I'm fine." But life isn't about being fine. Life should be about more than that. It should be about being, fantastic, and just waking up every day because you're so excited to just start and, do what you're doing and continue in the direction you're going and pursue your purpose and your passion. I mean, that's when life is really worth living. But I think what happens is people don't step back and really define what is this island. What is the metaphor? What's my ultimate goal? And where am I going? And it really kind of requires a lobotomy of sorts. Because when I started doing this myself, I was kind of following. I was still on the train tracks. I was still going along, doing what I should be doing, but I was getting frustrated because I was going around in circles, and I really had to step back and alter the way I was doing things to really figure out what am I going to do with my life.
Awesome. So surely, as our listeners can tell, you're kind of a lifelong entrepreneur. You're always looking to kind of find solutions to problems that sometimes don't even exist. But surely, somewhere along the way, you've run into some failures, you've run into some obstacles. Could you kind of talk us through an instance in which you've kind of fell flat on your face, and then following that, kind of how you recovered from that failure?
Sure. Yeah, I don't really think of failure as that big of a deal because it's kind of par for the course, I suppose. I have written a post on this actually on my website. If you check out OpenWorldMag.com about this very topic.
Awesome.
I don't remember the name of that post, but
okay, I'll include the link for our listeners following the call.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, like I said, it's part for the course. I mean, it happens. I might email 40 reporters and I hear back from one or two, but for me, that's a success, and I look at success and failure are two sides of the same coin, and it really comes down to how you define it. Tony Robbins says that, you're successful at something if you give it your best effort and you learn something. And that's really what it comes down to, because it's a path of continual learning. And if you give your best effort and you learn something, you're successful and you can do better the next time. And you have to expect that you're going to face some failure and rejection, but it makes you better in some way. If you're a stoicist, you can take any event that happens and interpret it in a positive way, in a way that's going to move you forward. And it's just like if you practice jujitsu, for example. When you start doing jujitsu, you're going to get thrown around a lot. But the more you get thrown around, the more experience you get. And then you graduate to another belt. And then you get thrown around some more. And, you basically advance by just getting tossed around and getting your ass kicked. And that's exactly the way it works with an entrepreneur. I hate to tell anyone this who thinks otherwise. But, it's not about milk and honey, about, setting your own hours or being your own boss. It's about working 80 hours a week so you can avoid working 40 hours a week. You have to be willing to make that sacrifice. But I think it's worth it because you make so much progress and you advance so far, then so much further than you would if you just didn't take that path. So.
Awesome. And again, great advice. So a lot of people, I'm sure, being your own boss, all that, I'm sure it crosses everyone's mind at some point, but really the fear of failure and the fear of going off and for whatever reason not accomplishing your goals is what scares a lot of people out of even taking that leap. So could you kind of talk to that point and kind of put a fire under some of our listeners' bellies and kind of get them thinking about, there's really not that much to be worried about?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think that if you're focusing on the potential for failure, that you're looking through the wrong end of the telescope. So a telescope has, the part where you see in and has the part where you see out. And these people are looking at the part where they see out to see, the opposite direction. And it really comes down to what George Lucas says. He has a quote where he says, you have to find something that you love enough to be able to take the risks, jump over the hurdles, and break through the brick walls that are going to be placed in front of you. If you don't have that kind of feeling for what you're doing, then you're going to stop at the first giant hurdle. So if you're thinking about the failure, the potential for failure, you're focusing on the hurdles. But you have to really focus on what you want. And if you want something badly enough, you're going to do whatever you have to get it. And the reason why more people aren't more successful in life, is because they don't have compelling reasons for what they're doing. And it all starts with the question why. So in my book, Buy Your Own Island, I talk about this concept 5 whys principle. And you can apply it to business. But you can also apply it to your own personal life. So let's say you listen to a podcast and the host says, he says you should do a morning ritual. Okay, well, that sounds like good advice, but then I ask myself, why should I do a morning ritual? Because, when I wake up in the morning, I want to be more productive. I want to start quicker. I could gain, back an hour or two of my day if I start doing a morning ritual. So if I have compelling reasons to do it, I'm going to do it. If it's a new year and I think I should go to the gym, I'm probably not going to do it. But if I ask myself why, I can say, I want to have more energy and feel great. I want to get into shape. I want to have a six-pack. I want my friends to be jealous. I mean, if you can create these reasons and you have enough compelling reasons backing you, that's going to push you forward. And, another good example of this is Arnold Schwarzenegger. Arnold Schwarzenegger, just dominated his competitions in the bodybuilding. And people asked him why he was so confident. And he said, my confidence comes from my vision. I imagine myself on that podium holding the trophy with all the other guys looking up to me. So he had really strong reasons backing what he was doing, and that enabled him to succeed. And I think it's true of any endeavor.
Awesome. And I love how you're kind of combining sources from all different areas. We've got Arnold Schwarzenegger fitness. Earlier we were talking about various authors. It's good to kind of, again, get the full spectrum of kind of these different sources of inspiration and knowledge that obviously, have contributed to your success today. So, again, I love to hear that as well. Danny, would you mind sharing some of your primary sources of happiness, kind of what really drives you and what fulfills you most about kind of where you are today and, what you've made of yourself?
Yeah, sure. So before, about 2 years ago, I was getting my happiness from, different adventures I was doing, like traveling around the world on a motorbike or sailing across the South China Sea or, exploring the Amazon. But now I can still do all that stuff, but I get a lot more fulfillment and enjoyment from the work that I'm doing now, because I feel like I'm making a difference, and I'm making an impact, because I hear people write to me and they say, you inspired me to do this, or, I need help with this, and I can help solve their problems. In my previous life, when I was doing digital advertising for digital marketing for businesses, I didn't have that feeling. I felt like I only mattered to a few people, maybe 4 or 5 people. And that's fine, but I feel like with the work I'm doing, it's creating a bigger impact. And
awesome.
Yeah, in regards to fulfillment, it comes down to, Tony Hsieh says there's three P's, basically. There's pleasure, passion, and purpose. Purpose is the hardest to acquire, but it's the strongest. So.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So just a few more questions for you.
Okay.
Building off of that last point that you raised around purpose, what would you tell others like me, other 20-somethings such as myself, who are kind of in the process of figuring out our careers, our passions, and our purpose? What would be one piece of advice that you would give your 20-something self?
You've heard of this concept called lifestyle design, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Obviously. I would say forget lifestyle design and focus on lifestyle discovery. And that basically comes down to, Jim Carrey in that movie, Yes Man?
Yes, I do.
So yeah, he's basically a guy who's in his shell. He says no to every invitation. He never shows up. Half the battle in life is showing up. So when you see opportunities, when opportunities come, just say yes. Just say yes more. If you see a path, if you see a fork in the road, take it. Because the more that you do that, you're going to expand your comfort zone, and you're going to expand your level of confidence and your ability to take action. And that's going to carry over and manifest in every area of your life. If you see, some girl you want to talk to and you don't know what to say to her, just say something, even if it's stupid, or just say hello. Just do it, because you're going to be able to build off that, and it's going to make you a better rounded person, and it's going to be a reference experience that you can use later. So.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So all of you guys listening, that girl at the bar this weekend, tell him Danny Flood sent you to talk to her. All right?
If I could give one more example, Matt.
Yeah.
I was in Guam a few months ago, and I was supposed to record a podcast with this guy, Sean, about languages, and I felt like super sick. I had this horrible headache, and I was like, I was on the verge of just canceling on him. But I knew that if I canceled, I wasn't going to be able to get him back onto agree to be interviewed with his schedule. So I was like, all right, fuck it, I'll just do it. And whenever I feel like that resistance, like I'm not sure if I want to come onto a call because I've been doing a lot of interviews. I'll just think back to that time when I didn't feel that good, but the interview turned out fantastic. And that's basically a reference experience where I felt that I had this, resistance, but I overcame it, and I did a great job anyway. So it's just about feeling that, fear, that resistance, and just pushing forward anyway. And then you can use that to build on it later.
Awesome advice again. So just to kind of wrap things up, getting more to the kind of technical side of, living life on the road and being a successful digital nomad per se, as you are, what are some resources, whether it be, online applications, programs, or even tools that you have in your backpack? What are some resources that you couldn't live without and have contributed to your successes today?
Yeah, sure. So I guess it's a little bit ironic. Even though I'm a location-independent entrepreneur, I don't rely too much on technology. One of my favorite things is just to have a notebook and also a journal. Just having a journal, I can write into it whenever I want. If I'm ever feeling like upset about something or just frustrated, I can just write out my feelings. That really helps a lot. I can write things that I'm grateful for, and that makes an impact on how I think. I'm big on keeping to-do lists. As far as technical stuff, I've been using a couple different tools lately, which for email. So I see that email is a great opportunity for marketing, but most of us don't use it that way. It's a great free tool for marketing, and I've been using two apps in particular for Google or Gmail, and one is called Streak, and it's just a basically free CRM system that you can add to your inbox. And it has really useful features like using snippets. You can do customized mass mail merges. And then another one is Boomerang. So Boomerang allows you to time an email. So if, after this conversation, if I wanted to follow up with you, Matt, I could write another email and time it to go out in 1 month from now. So it automatically follows up. If someone says, I'm busy now, come back later, I just start typing an email and I say, okay, all right, set it to 2 months. And then I follow up with them automatically. So I think email is a great tool. Exactly. If you're a blogger or you're trying to get some buzz for yourself, I think that email is a great tool to market yourself if you don't have a lot of resources early on.
Awesome, and I'll include links to those resources that you mentioned on the podcast post as well.
Yeah, sure. And in my book, if you're going to use email, use it the right way. I wouldn't. I have a lot of tips. I just posted a tip on using email to get what you want. Actually, I can paste a link to that. I just published that like 2 days ago. And also in my book, I have a guide to using email so that you can communicate effectively and reach influential people, which I think is very, very important.
Awesome, absolutely. So Danny, if our listeners want to follow along with all the exciting stuff that you have going on, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, sure. So you can join us at openworldmag.com. That's the That's our blog. We also have a podcast. We're on episode 34 now, I think. And subscribe to our podcast. We also have a magazine, digital magazine, that we're going to be publishing soon. My goal is to create the first printed magazine dedicated to this lifestyle, this digital nomad, location independent lifestyle design. That's really the goal. We want to be on the shelf next to Maxim magazine, and we're going to kick the crap out of them because our magazine is going to be 10 times better than them. So
awesome.
Yeah. So yeah, OpenWorldMag.com, and then I have a free audiobook for Buy Your Own Island. You can go to buyyourownisland.com/audio-book. Maybe you can put a link to that as well.
Awesome. I will do that, Danny. All right. Well, that wraps things up for today's podcast. Thanks again to Danny Flood for his awesome insights and inspiring conversation.
Yeah, thank you, Matt.
All right. Have a good one, Danny.
You too.